Now, in the last video, we were talking about denouncing sin from behind the pulpit against all types of sin, whether they be in community government, whether they be in the local church. We need to denounce sin. And we looked at Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 13, which talked about us, Christians, putting on the whole armor of God and having done all to stand. And that having done all to stand is using all your resources that you have to stand against the wiles of the devil, to stand against tyranny, friends, to stand against sin. But we're not doing that today. The reason that lawlessness abounds everywhere that we look is because people aren't standing up against sin, and especially the pulpit. The pulpit is that which empowers. The pulpit is that which stirs up, as Peter talks about, stirring up. And they need to stir up the people and let them know that they are doing the Lord's work when they denounce sin. The Lord's work when they are denouncing wickedness and opposing it and standing and having done all to stand against it. As we said before, where are the pulpits when in talking about Benghazi? You know, in the Old Testament we have a story in where King David was approached by one of God's men. His name was Nathan. And it was the same situation that we had in Benghazi. There was a stand-down order that was given. Uriah the Hittite was the target. He was sent to the front lines, to the hottest places in the battle. And when the time came, Joab had a stand-down order, and they drew back, and Uriah the Hittite was left there, and he was killed. And Nathan was sent by God, and Nathan pointed to David, and he said, "Thou art the man." Where are the people behind the pulpit? Where's the message behind the pulpit that's saying, government, what happened there in Benghazi was wrong? Thou art the man. Why aren't people talking about Pat Tillman, who was killed in Iraq? Why aren't we giving out the "thou art the man"? And justices are being done all over the place, and the pulpit is being silent. Where are we in IRS gate? Don't you know, people, that there's think tanks that think of these things, and they observe and they watch how the church reacts to these certain things? And I tell you right now, there's a silence behind the pulpit about IRS gate. And they see that, and they've taken note of that, and it's empowering them to go after the tax-exempt churches in America. You don't think they see that? Of course they do. That's why it is imperative that we need to stand so that we can have churches in the future that will be able to pronounce the gospel of Jesus Christ. For if we do not, and they come down and they persecute the church, there will be no pulpit for you, preacher, to stand and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. What about the future generations? What about your children? Are they not worth to fight for? Are they not worth to fight for the freedom of religion that you have? Oh, friend, we've had blood, sweat, and tears in the past that gave us this freedom. I think about people in the past like the French Huguenots and Oliver Cromwell and what was called the Black Robe Brigade in the American Revolutionary War. Men like Jonas Clark, who took his boys, who took his members of his church down there to Lexington Concord and held a bridge for liberty. But where are we today? Where are the preachers today who are holding that bridge and having done all to stand against tyranny? It's not there. And we're going to lose our liberty because we're not standing up against tyranny. My friends, we need to stand and we need to unite before it's too late. We need to break the silence. Preachers and laymen, unite! Unite! standing on the Word of God. And you know, if you stand for the Word of God, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did in the Old Testament, and like Stephen did in the New Testament, and like the Black Brigade did in an American Revolutionary War, you stand for God, and God will stand for you. And that's worth it all. It's worth it all to know that you did all to stand. It's worth it all to know that you fought a good fight, and that you stood on the Word of God and on your principles, even if it meant denouncing the government and their tyranny. Just to hear those words say, "Well done, thou faithful servant." Isn't that worth it all? Isn't it worth blood, sweat, and tears for your future generations to enjoy the religious freedom that you grew up with? I think it is. And it's time to stand. It's time to stand before it's too late. Before it's too late.